Feeling my Walter Cronkite today. It is Friday, May 24th, 2024, Memorial Day weekend. A lot of kids getting out of school, at least in the deep south. Down here,
we're done.
Kudzu and Cotton are king.
We're done. School's done for us.
Yeah, there you go. And this
we're
is
done. We've been out of school for a minute.
Memorial Day weekend, man. It's going to be a great weekend. Yeah. And remember what we are honoring on Monday for the people who keep us free. Don't ever forget that. That is what it's all about. Hey, Rob Browne, Brenden Martin, Doug Dean, Dave Tompkins, Kevin Scarbinsky, all checking in here just a minute. Smash subscribe button, bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on Android and iPhone. Sync us live wherever you are or later at your leisure. We're coming at you. Got a great show, lot to talk about. We'll squeeze it in.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, guys, a lot of stuff. I don't want to use the term breaking news, Dave, because that's been used so much. It's like the boy that cried wolf, or the kid that screams every time he sees a dorsal fin when he's looking out on the Gulf, you know? Usually that's a porpoise, I might add.
A porpoise, it's not a shark.
By the way, a dolphin. Yeah. But by the way, I wouldn't recommend swimming with dolphins or porpoises, because if they got a full head of steam going and they hit you with that snout, you're in trouble. Doug Dean joins us right now.
They also like the male dolphins also like a certain activity 13 or 14 times a day.
Yeah, they're rough. Okay, let me tell you what. Quote from our friend Jan Cowart, Doug Dean. Jan Cowart, the last football player that I know of at Auburn to major in architecture and also start 4 years on the offensive line. Jan sent me this text just now. He said, Rob, and this is the prelude. Given today's settlement news, see this tweet from 10 years ago written by moi, Jan Cowart, would have cost them a quarter of what they have paid had they not kicked the can down the road. And this is Jan Cowart, SEC payout in 1983, $5.9 million. The payout in 2014, $309 million. Player benefit equals scholarship in both years. Fair? Question. Jan Cowart, Philip Cowart, two of the finest men I know. He's right. Doug Dean, you heard that. Pontius Pilate ran the NCAA way too long.
Yeah, well, good morning, guys. Definitely, I hope that the sedation for your dental care is working well. We need to play a violin gently and softly in some mournful tone for the death of amateurism today. Of course, we've been coming for years. You're going to hear a lot of people bemoaning that, I just really long for the days that the players were all about my school and my alma mater. And I don't know that we ever entirely had that. But if you really like, it's still available. Go become a Wake Forest fan. Pick your team. I don't want to be hard on anybody in particular. For all I know, Wake Forest could rise up financially and be competitive. So I think it's like most things. There'll be a grieving process and a loss of some things. There'll be an adaptation. But let me tell you what's going to stomp the accelerator. Duffy was texting about it this morning. I don't think we'll get even 2 or 3 years out before you've got something that looks awfully like NFC and AFC, and we might as well call it semi-pro at this point.
But the product will be entertaining. And at the end of the day, that's what drives television viewership, media rights, and now the waterfall from media rights down to the athletes. I'm not saying I don't think it's good for society, but it's good for entertainment.
I agree totally, and that's exactly it. We don't like it, but the ratings and the eyeballs will be watching the TVs, and the money trail is what drives everything, Doug.
Well, I want to ask, Dave can take the first shot at this, or any of you that are farther on the learning curve than I am. Numbers work, Dave, after this settlement. I could see, I was joking with a friend, in this new world order, because Auburn and Alabama, all of our favorite schools, Florida, will be in the mix to try to win a national championship. They'll be doling out big money every year. But as a student, probably in no time, your in-state tuition, let's pick a number, call it $80,000 a year for in-state tuition. But you get to go see your favorite player from high school or Lake Charles High School Wildcats for Duffy, or Highland Homes High School. They're the squadron, the fire squadron is what they are. You get to go see them in your team's colors and watch them make $1 million a year while you're trying to slave away to get a college degree.
Yeah, that is, Dave. I want your take on that.
Well, that's. I mean, it's like a ledger. It's like a balance sheet, and I think the liability side is society, and the asset side is entertainment. And so I think what Doug's talking about is a liability where college tuition goes up. Some people that would have otherwise gone to college can't go to college, but all of us who've been to college and are older, or half of Alabama's fan base never went to college. They're getting to watch a more entertaining product. The SEC and the Big Ten is going to become the AFC and the NFC, and I mean that's just the way it is. And then when if you want to stay on the liability side, obviously the non-revenue sports are going to suffer. Our dear friend at Louisiana Monroe, that's tough times, austere times ahead for them. I don't think we'll ever see a Boise State Cinderella again, and so we'll miss that sort of story value. But I think at least for the near term, it's going to cause TV ratings to go up. The next wave of media rights deals will go up, and so the rich will get richer. But I think the big thing is what's going to be the long-term impact on society. I think this is, and I could be wrong. I only did a couple hours of homework getting ready today, but I think there's really been 3 landmark things that have happened in athletics. The first was Curt Flood and Marvin Miller and the onset of free agency, which I think entertainment and society benefited greatly from that. That it took baseball and then all professional sports away from plantation owners. The next thing I would say would be Title IX, and lots of arguments on either side for that. But it did provide an avenue for people that otherwise couldn't play college sports to play college sports. And just my one little data point of West Point, when you look at who made 3-star general, who made 4-star general, who took who had a unicorn startup, who became a Fortune 100 CEO. Almost every one of them played college athletics at Army, and so that's a big thing. So yeah, there's a lot to shake out. I think the one thing that pisses me off the most is that there is one clear winner, and that's the lawyers, as always. But there's some takes on my part.
Hey, I don't know about you guys when you're running a business, but every business I've been a part of, if you take an unexpected, precipitous hit to your revenue, your margin, the only you can enhance revenue, but that usually takes a while. You can be acquired by someone for a cash inflow, but most of the immediate thing is to drastically reduce expenses. So I was thinking, it seems to me that the power brokers for the SEC and Big Ten and whatever carcasses are pulled up out of the ACC and Big 12 that make it into this grouping, NFC and AFC. Where is the overhead, Rob and Dave? I think you got to look at NCAA. That's a pretty massive operating overhead in Indianapolis. I would be showing them the door pretty quickly and saying, that March Madness revenue, we'll just take that if you don't mind. We can figure.
Yeah, let's just focus on the great states of Indiana and Ohio. So, I mean, if I'm the NCAA, I'm like, okay, let's find our landlord and let's start to negotiate an out clause of our lease, because we're going to need about a quarter of the square footage for the headquarters, and then move over one state to the east in Ohio. I read this morning that the Ohio State Athletic Department has 139 employees who make more than $100,000 a year. Now, what do those employees do? What do they really do? That's going to get cut to like 14.
All right, this is what we've been saying on this show more than anybody I can hear, is these are state universities, okay? And they lend themselves to a lot of the bad habits of any governmental bureaucracy. I'm not saying that everybody that works for a state university is bad. I know plenty of people that do. But they ask the same question to me. They go, Rob, there's all these people running around at my school. We have no idea what they do, and they're making six figures. I mean, I'm going to tell you something. I have been in the commission business my whole career. I mean, again, my first 2 years in TV, I would qualify for food stamps, what they paid me back then in today's world. But I'll tell you this. You're going to have to cut the fat at these universities. And where we're going to go is these collectives. You have maybe 6 people running a collective, lean and mean. You're going to have the universities take over potentially. They're going to have 60 people on staff. Then they're going to need a new $75 million building to house them. You know, I mean, you think about the growth of government. Remember that Friday night horror film, The Blob, we all saw as kids? That's what it is. And I'll tell you something else. The natural laws of, and Doug talked about this. I mean, you and I being in the finance, and Doug knows it too. Doug is a very, very smart. You're very smart. Both of y'all are. But I'm going to tell you what, they're going to have to cut fat. The NCAA is so, this is not if you're going to make changes, you need to be leaner and more efficient. And Ohio State is the federal government equivalent of college athletics.
And in our conference, the whole Texas A&M Jimbo Fisher thing disgusted us.
Oh God,
it absolutely disgusted us. And he comes in with all his fanfare, gets all these great athletes, and they suck. Well, one good thing to come out of this is I don't think we'll be seeing buyout clauses in the future. And I think we might see a new type of college coach at many of the programs, even in the SEC and Big Ten. We talk in the early Saban era, we talk about, game managers, and, all his quarterbacks were just game managers. Well, now that universities can directly pay athletes and specifically football players and specifically quarterbacks and wide receivers, you might see a clever university move the recruiting from the college coach over to the actual administration, and then your coach is actually a talent manager. He's an X's and O's guy, and all he's doing is maximizing. He doesn't have to worry about recruiting, and so he's getting these great athletes that the university recruits. Because they hire a former. I mean, if it were basketball, you would hire Magic Johnson to recruit for Michigan State. And so you get all these great athletes. You're an otherwise assistant coach in the NFL, great X's and O's guy, but can't recruit, don't want to recruit, and you just manage the team. I think we're going to see some of that, and it doesn't mean that the era of the Nick Sabans and stuff are over, but I think the bigger than the program college coach, I think that has been marginalized or will be marginalized as a result of this.
There's a classic and memorable line from a movie script, the great movie War Games. Matthew Broderick, Allie, she was a cutie, wasn't she, Rob?
The late Dabney Coleman, Mr. McKittery,
Colonel Sanders.
Anyway, the computer finally figures out their tic-tac-toe. A strange game. The only way to win is not to play. My question is, and I think it's inevitable, there's going to, below that if the audience doesn't mind us calling it NFC and AFC, East and West. However, North and South is a little too reminiscent of Civil War era, but whatever they're called, below that tier, I think you see, unless they come with, which I think would be smart, and I would look forward to it, there's a second level national championship, group of 5, whatever you want to call it. That if they can stage that, to whoever wins that might get an automatic berth to be the 12th team. But my point is, below that, there are going to be some programs that look at the money and the drop off and fan interest and season tickets, and they just completely shut down their football program. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not. And I think y'all want me to try to get Coach Jackie Sherrill on for next Friday's discussion with us?
Absolutely.
Okay. 32 years ago, he talked about this in Memphis at the Touchdown Club, and he saw this coming. And he has been on this like nobody else. Doug, great points. And I've had some coaches tell me off the record, I have to keep it off the record, you have to do that, and they've said, Rob, in 2 or 3 years, I'll predict that half the sports we have now, we have 91 NCAA national championships for men's and women's sports. He said, I predict half of those will be gone in 2 or 3 years. And a lot of stuff will be at club level. But you're right about sports. You learn lessons of life playing sports, Dave. And you think about the military. I know at my high school, Christian Brothers High School, you talk about tough academics and, my God, tough discipline. In the name of God, the LaSallian brothers, they were the best. But I look at over 10,000 graduates of Christian Brothers High School, what they have done. Paul Feinbaum went there, and then he went and moved to White Station when his father died when he was a sophomore. But he said he still considers himself a brother's boy. I think about what that meant to me when I did sports and stuff there. But by God, it was academic. It was God, studies, and then all that other stuff. Okay,
Dave,
you're right.
You're a genius. Sorry if I walked on you wrong. Dave, I consider you close to genius on understanding business paradigm.
He is.
There's a paradigm, I guess, over these decades was that amateurism was acceptable to athletes. They seemed happy they were getting to the NFL if they were good enough, and that college education was so valuable that it could be considered enough compensation. But it was really it's amazing it wasn't legally challenged far sooner. But shifting back to my point a minute ago, Dave, tell us your best scenario by which we can save these second-tier college football programs that have their own proud football tradition. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not littered with national championships, but they have a fan base. How can we save that going forward?
Well, oh gosh, it was probably 2 months ago. We've talked about it a few times on the show about, the emergency of a white knight private equity group that creates a tournament for basically the non-power 4 or 5, the have-nots. And, you think about, if you look at a roster of any private equity firm or any venture capital firm, it's like, okay, yeah, she played lacrosse at Princeton. He played volleyball at Harvard. She played, women's basketball, or, she played basketball at Stanford. And so you're going to have, I think, these people that are passionate about athletics and don't want to see athletics go away, because they know it helped make their career. One of my roommates at Stanford played basketball for a tiny little Bates College in Maine. And he said playing basketball turned him into a better student, because he only had so many hours to study, because, he was either, practicing playing games or working out. So he only had these little, blocks of time to study. So he was able to focus and compartmentalize, and that helped him, has helped him in his career. And I think, people in private equity firms get that because they lived it. And I think we will, at some point we will see tournaments and whatnot for the have-nots. And I think that'll keep competition going. Will save some sports at schools that would otherwise be dead. So I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, if to me, success here would be if all of this causes entertainment to take 2 or 3 steps forward and society to only take maybe a half a step back.
Let me pose another, and I'm not smart enough to know all the ins and outs, the moving parts of it, but I could also see, because what I'm going to pose here was some believe was maybe glacially slow, but it was inching its way into American sports and so-called amateur sports. Rob, we should laugh about that. The players that have won national championships the last 20 years, I don't care what school it was, including Auburn, they were not really amateur, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the great game of soccer and World Cup, I wonder if some of these have-nots we're talking about will do the numbers and they'll look strategically at, man, if we try to keep fan engagement and interest and make the money work after the settlement this week, it's not going to work. We will have fans dropping like flies. But what if we do like Joshua with the computer in war games and we choose not to play college football as a have-not, and instead we pour that money into seeing if we can recruit international students who are rising soccer, World Cup soccer superstars. They can come get an education in the States here, and all of a sudden college football is competing not with itself for national championships. They're competing with the potential rising popularity of soccer at the college level.
That is a great point, Doug. That is a fantastic point. That's the best point made on the show so far, I think. I think Caitlin Clark is a one-off. I don't think we'll see this ever again. That's what's so cool about Muhammad Ali and Tiger and Caitlin. But she's also a leading indicator, because if she's one person, if she can move the needle that much in terms of attendance and TV viewership, both in college and in her first 5 games, going 0-5 in the WNBA. Well, do that at scale. And Doug, that's your point. That's probably not women's basketball. That's probably soccer. And it's probably some of the Olympic sports. But I think soccer is probably the best example. And so, you have Vanderbilt, right? So Vanderbilt's never going to have a good football team, but they figure out let's just kind of punt on football, let's shut down our football program, and let's build us the best soccer team in America, and that's their way forward. Great point, Doug.
The great Kevin Scarbo.
Yeah. Kevin, jump in this conversation. Not a whole lot to talk about other than what's going on with the NCAA, the House settlement, SEC baseball tournament, whatever. But we've had a really lively discussion here this first 22 minutes about where we're going, what this settlement means, and what could have been avoided. Jan Cowart sent me a great text that he wrote 10 years ago on Twitter. He said, SEC payout 1983, $5.9 million. 2014, $309 million. If they would have just addressed these issues 10 years ago and not played kick the can, where would we be today? I ask you that question. The great Kevin Scarbinsky from Pottsville, PA, the Birmingham Lead, and Scarbo Knows.
Good morning, guys. I'm not sure I know where I am at the moment. I left the Hoover Med at 2 o'clock this morning. After
thank you for joining us, by the way.
I'm always glad to be with you. It just got me up and going today, since the first pitch isn't until 3 o'clock this afternoon at the SEC baseball tournament. And speaking of college sports feeling like it used to feel, go to the SEC baseball tournament if you get a chance, if you're in the Hoover area the next 3 days. And it's not the way it used to be. When LSU and South Carolina play an epic 11-10 game in which LSU had to come back from deficits of 5-1 and 10-7 and do what LSU baseball has done since Skip Bertman got there in 1984. But the game-winning hit comes from a guy from Michael Braswell III, who played the last 2 years at, wait for it, South Carolina.
Wow.
You can't script these things unless Skip Bertman who's still with us, by the way, who's the angel in the outfield. He turned 86 yesterday. He's the Bear Bryant of SEC baseball. And even the South Carolina coach said after the game, I knew we were in trouble when I found out this morning it was Skip Bertman's birthday. And LSU had an epic comeback. But, obviously there's NIL in college baseball, not on the level of basketball and football necessarily. And there's the transfer portal. I mean, you got guys from Vanderbilt playing at South Carolina. You got a guy from South Carolina playing now for LSU. Just didn't knock South Carolina out of the tournament, knocked them out of the winner's bracket yesterday. So it just feels different, though. It just feels more like college sports.
Yeah.
This event feels, even though it's grown and expanded, and they're going to do some unbelievable things to the Hoover Met Stadium over the next year for next year's event, which is the last year under contract, the first year of the 16-team SEC baseball tournament, which everybody plays, and it's a single elimination. It still feels like it did 1996, the first year it came here, and then after a one-year detour to Columbus, Georgia, 1998, when it came here to stay, and I hope it continues to stay because it's exactly where it belongs. It just reminds you of what it kind of used to be like in all sports before it became so professionalized and so much about the money. And as you said, Robin, as Yan Coward, and look, Yan Coward, I covered my first job at the Birmingham News after they hired me full-time after being an intern. My first writing job was covering Auburn athletics. And Yan played on the offensive line, which tells you something about Yan. He wasn't the biggest guy in the room, but he probably had the biggest heart, and he definitely had the biggest brain. As smart, intelligent, wise as any college athlete I think I've ever met. If you've got a bunch of athletes together 15 years ago, like Yan Coward, they could have figured this out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the smartest people in the room, or the people who thought they were the smartest people in the room, decided that all this, as this revenue continued to grow and they had to figure out what to do with it, well, let's do everything we can with it except pay the players.
Right.
Let's do everything we can with it to enhance the stadiums. Let's put waterfalls in the locker room, in the football locker room. Let's build football locker rooms that have lounge chairs that turn into benches where they can nap because they spend so much time in the facility. And let's make sure they have neon lights around them and they have video, which is great. That's great that they have those amenities. But they could have done something smarter with the money. They could have done something different with the money. They could have recognized that as the money grew, it was going to become more and more apparent that it was inequitable for coaches to be making $5, $8, $10, $12, $13 million a year, and ADs to start making over $1 million a year, and coordinators make up to $2 million a year, and players get a very valuable college scholarship. I would never downplay the value of a college scholarship. And I won't for probably decades as I pay back my son's student loans. They're both in college right now. So it's really unfathomable.
What if
people in charge didn't do something to get ahead of this a long time ago, and now they're paying the piper?
What if the first opportunity, I think, Rob, you mentioned it earlier in the show, I forget when the first chance they had and they decided to kick the can and whiff on it. But what if back then there had been some smart people in the room in Indianapolis, which I don't think there ever has been, and said, look, let's set up a pension program. And so the athlete is not getting paid while they're in school, but it's a pension, and it's not just for their time in school. It continues down the road, and you figure out some sort of waterfall structure, and you get 2 payments. You get a payment. I'm just making these numbers up. I ride my bike and kind of doodling mentally when I was biking this morning. I don't know, 35, or you're 34 years old, and you get a payment, and then your next payment's like normal when you're 62. Well, at 34 or 35. Maybe life hasn't gone the way you want it to have gone from the time you left, playing college football and you didn't make it in the NFL or whatever. Well, there's a chance for a restart. And then of course at the end, and that would have been, and then by this point, athletes would have hit their first, payment time, and they'd be happy, and it would probably be a program that the athletes and their parents and their extended family said, hey, this works. This is good. We don't need to challenge it. We don't need to disrupt it. Something like that. But I mean, there was no creativity back then. It was just, let's just let this continue, and hopefully it'll never become a problem.
Let me throw one out at you, and Doug and Kevin and Dave, in the market world, when a company does well, they pay a dividend. That would have been the smart thing for the universities to have recognized years ago, is let's pay out a dividend. You're putting money into NRAs, non-revenue producing assets. I mean, waterfalls and all these things, they're great. But you've got, as the owner of a business, and we all know this, you've got to invest in people. It's your number one resource. And y'all have said it as well as I've ever heard it put. And Dave, I've got to agree with you. Living brain donor is the requirement on the resume to apply to the NCAA. Living brain donor. Doug Dean. It's unbelievable.
No, it's. I mean, the elephant in the room that we started the show is. This is a complete abomination. Referendum on how horrible the NCAA has been.
Yeah, Jackie Sherrill just texted me back. He will be on the show with us next Friday for Savant Friday to talk about this, and he is so nice. I don't know why he likes us, but he loves coming on this show, and we'll get him on next Friday to talk. So y'all take over this. I'm loving listening to you. I got the dog in my lap.
Rob, I beg to differ with you on Jackie, Coach Sherrill being nice. He wasn't very nice to Auburn.
No, but he's nice to the show.
No, I like Coach Sherrill. He's very. What you get is honesty and blunt candor, and we're in short supply of that. I was trying to think of the funding side of this. When all of this league Supreme Court ruling and the tectonic shift in the earth plates of college athletics, especially football, to a lesser extent, I guess, basketball, what are the funding sources? And I think the powers that be, the first thing they thought was, like, can we crowd our fans and get them to dig in their wallet a little more? They've already they're paying for Tide, Pride, Tigers Unlimited, and all those soon-to-be archaic programs, arguably. Then the hand is out, the plate is passed for NIL collectives, and there's going to, I presume, be a deficit that athletic departments face unless something can be worked out with all the TV, how the money flows through the books with TV. And then you've got private equity opportunities. And at some point, and maybe this is lunacy, I wonder if, for the obvious reason that they have a horse in the game, would the NFL be a potential funding source, since this, after all, is going to be, always was, now it really will be the developmental league for the NFL. And they don't really have a developmental league other than college football. Where else are there funding sources, Kevin?
Well, you brought up a couple of interesting points there, Doug. First of all, and look, I am no financial analyst or expert by any stretch of the imagination. But what I have read about private equity and the idea that private equity is going to get involved scares the daylights out of me.
Amen.
Because you always have to ask, okay, so someone's going to give you all of this money. What do they want in return?
Yeah.
They're not going to get a stake in Auburn. They're not going to get, 5% of ownership of Auburn University or whatever it might be, per se, as they might with private businesses. And you often hear people say, what industry has private equity improved when it showed up on the scene, supposedly as the savior? So that's one issue, obviously, that they have to deal with. And that seems very real, that discussion with what Drew Weatherford and his group are doing, for example. But you mentioned another interesting possibility there, Doug. Particularly the NFL and the NBA have gotten a free ride on college athletics serving as their minor leagues. They're developmental programs.
Yeah.
And what have they done? What have they given in return?
Nothing.
What has the NFL done for college football? I'll tell you what it's done for next season. It's scheduled 2 games almost directly opposite 2 of the 3 first-round playoff games on December 21st on that Saturday that are going to be played on college campuses.
Wow.
That's one thing the NFL's done. Basically saying, look, we own television, which they do.
They do.
And we're going to play when we want to play. And we want to play on that Saturday, December 21st, because we also want to own Christmas Day. We can't let the NBA people be watching the NBA on Christmas Day. We got to make sure we own that day as well, just as now they want to own Black Friday, and now they want to own that Saturday before Christmas. And they say, well, be able to have teams play on a Wednesday on the 25th. They got to play on the 21st. They can't play on the 22nd on Sunday. It's absurd. The NFL, to me is no friend of college football when it should be.
Yeah.
It should be a giant supporter of college football. Doug, I think that's a great suggestion. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yep.
In our lifetimes. But you talk about an inequitable relationship where one side gives the other side basically its talent pool, its entire talent pool comes through college football at some level, some Division III, some D2s, but primarily D1. But what are they giving in return? Nothing.
And Kevin, to kind of prove the point, I know it's apples and watermelons. It's not apples to apples comparison. To prove the point, Major League Baseball obviously does financially support its own developmental leagues, which are not inexpensive. So the model is there already.
Well,
and even in baseball, Doug, college baseball has become more and more of a developmental avenue for players to get to the major leagues. And even then, the best players in the SEC, Paul Skeens is now in the majors. A year ago, he was pitching for LSU.
Yeah.
Wyatt Langford from Florida, who hits the ball as hard as any human being I think I've ever seen in person.
Yeah.
Swings as hard, hits it as hard. He's now playing for the Texas Rangers. He played for the Florida Gators last year.
Yeah. Well,
and so
yeah.
They have 2 avenues there. And even those guys went to the minors at least briefly after Florida and LSU, elite college baseball programs, before they went to the minors for a cup of coffee before they proved they were good enough to get up to the majors. So, yeah, that's something that's never really been addressed. I don't know that it ever will be addressed or can be addressed. And now the problem is everything that the leadership of college athletics does is reactionary now.
Yeah.
It's reactionary. They are so far behind the curve. It's like trying to hit a curve out at the Hoover Met. First of all, you got to see it before you can hit it. And they had the lack of vision among athletic directors, presidents and chancellors, and then the leadership of the central office in Indianapolis has been
Kevin,
obviously lacking, shall we say, to be polite.
Yeah.
I'm struggling, frankly, and I'm usually Mr. Positivity, Mr. Half Full Glass, but looking for some silver linings. Wouldn't you agree? And you'll know exactly what I'm referring to without pointing fingers at Ohio State, anybody in particular. There's enough blame to go around on NCAA violations over the decades, but isn't transparency to some extent a winner in all of this? Because we will soon know exactly what various athletes are being paid, unless there is, in addition to that, which there may be, supplemental $100 handshakes that boosters are still out of control with.
Well, hey, you just raised another issue, Doug, because first of all, this settlement is not settled. It's agreed upon. The parameters of it are agreed upon. The details are not. There are individual players going back to 2016, which is the population that these cases, the House case and the other 2 that are part of this broad-based settlement agreement covers, athletes going, before NIL was allowed, they can opt out. They don't have to agree to this. And by opting out, they reserve the right to file their own lawsuits. You have this other case in Colorado, which they'd like to bring under this umbrella, but so far is not under this umbrella. So this does not give them, someone called it, which it might have been Michael McCann, one of the lawyers who has become a voice of reason or intelligence on these subjects and just at least knows the territory. Yeah, it's not a get out of jail free card, or it's not a not never get sued again card.
Right.
This settlement. So, there's still a lot of issues here to be decided going forward. And it is historic. It is groundbreaking. It is earth shattering in some ways. What was agreed upon yesterday, finally by the SEC and the old Pac-12 folks. It's not the end. It's not the end.
Kevin, before you came on, I sort of started the idea, and I didn't get any disagreement. We convened the board of directors of the new power conference of the Big Ten and SEC. Call it what you want. And we laid off the entire NCAA operation in Indianapolis because we got to cut overhead, right? And I'm exaggerating in how that would work, but I'm not exaggerating a lot. So I wonder if these athletes are now to be paid, to be compensated, they're semi-pro, does the notion of eligibility, as we've thought of it, even have any meaning at this point? I mean, you're investigating what? Something that was not part of the above board NIL compensation? And can you legally enforce? I don't think it would hold up in court if a school or any parties in the free market want to pay a player additionally. Is that in fact a violation, and can it even be enforced?
I don't think so. I think, and that was the point I left out. That you sparked in my brain a second ago, Doug, is in addition to this 21 million, whatever the salary cap is going to be, that schools can agree to distribute to their athletes by some unknown formula. And boy, isn't that going to be fun when they figure that one out?
Yeah.
That does not preclude them necessarily from making additional NIL funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, who are the people who couldn't see this coming or saw it coming and turned a blind eye to it I think is a better description. They are now the people who are going to decide, okay, the quarterback's going to get this much of that 21 million. The point guard's going to get this much. The left tackle is going to get that. And of course, we all have great confidence that they'll do this very, very honestly and fairly.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, here's the problem. You've got these idiots tripping over $1 to save a penny. And they waited till the house was on fire to go try to buy fire insurance. It's their fault. And Lauren Smith said on the show a year ago, why not have the NFL pay for this stuff? Because Roger Goodell makes $32 million a year. I'm guessing that's $1 million from each team as commissioner of the NFL. They do nothing. They are takers from the college game. They don't do a damn thing. So I'm curious there's no leadership in the NCAA, but someone like Nick Saban, let's say he's commissioner. We make a commissioner, and you have a round top table where they stand, and the meeting, like in the Army, Dave would know, takes 5 or 10 minutes, and you're done. But Nick Saban say what the product is that is coming from the colleges to the NFL today, except in my case at Alabama, these kids are not being properly developed. They're not. I mean, the quarterbacks, we're watering down the quarterbacks. When Jalen Hurts can get the biggest contract ever, he's not a great quarterback. He's already been figured out in the NFL. I mean, I really do think he's been figured out. And, he's this great teammate. I don't know. I know a lot of Alabama people that will not agree with that. I'll just say this, that the NFL will suffer if the colleges are not developing these guys. And if there's no eligibility requirement. When was the last time a player, other than Coach O at LSU, remember they had the player that was ineligible? if we don't have accountability in here, guys, nothing is going to change. That's what I'm saying.
I agree on commissioner. I think, and obviously Coach Saban would be a perfect commissioner or a Coach Saban type of person who is true north, but also no nonsense hard ass. And I would love to see that. I think a commissioner is absolute right time. Great point, Rob. To Kevin's earlier point about the Hoover Met, and Kevin's a Hall of Fame storyteller, and Rob and Doug and I are decent storytellers. I think the onus of responsibility is also on us to start writing in our websites, our blogs, and say, go to the Hoover Met. Go back in time and experience this. The SEC golf tournament, and I would love for them to play, the tournament be at some course on the Robert Trent Jones Trail, and so go to Greenville, Alabama, and the trail there, and watch this, and watch these, young women and men who play the great game of golf, and some of them will make it to the LPGA and to the PGA tours. So amateur athletics is still alive and well, and go experience it. And so if you're a middle-class person, you can't pay to go to Bryant-Denny anymore and watch your Tide. You have to watch them on TV, but you can still consume college athletics and amateur athletics if you do what Kevin's doing, right now at the SEC tournament.
Hey, Dave, I've got an idea for a one-off fundraiser for college athletics. And it's modeled after what Kentucky did yesterday morning, their baseball team. They were facing Arkansas, and Hagen Smith, the best pitcher in the country, undefeated, 9-0, hadn't lost in his 14 starts. Yeah. He had shut down Kentucky completely their first game earlier in the year. Struck out 14 Wildcats. They could barely touch him. So before they were playing yesterday, they were going to play yesterday at 9:30. And obviously Kentucky wanted things to go differently. It was an elimination game. All right. So Nick Mingione, the head coach of Kentucky, had his players at 7:00 in the morning stand up. Everybody who took an at-bat against Hagen Smith the last time, he had 14 of them struck out. He had them stand up, and as Nick said, in his man voice, let his teammates know what he was going to do differently yesterday than he did the first time around. And he said each of those hitters had a battle buddy, a pitcher who stood nose to nose with him. And he said they got into some pretty heated discussions because, of course, as he noted, the famous phrase, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. He said, we might have struck out 14 times again, but we weren't going to do it the same way we did the first time. We're going to do it differently. I want to have that kind of situation. Get every Power 5 for whatever, 2 athletic director, chancellor and president, top NCAA officials from Indianapolis. I want them to stand up on a stage. I want them to use their man voices, and I want them to tell us how they're going to do things differently from here than they've done for the last umpteen years. What confidence should we have that they're going to be able to manage this brave new world that they've stumbled themselves into? I think that would be entertaining. Put that on pay-per-view. You make some money.
Guys, I was back to the NFL question, and I need some NFL draft and NFL personnel management help assistance on this analysis. But if I'm right, that below this new Super League, Super Conference level, which is primarily SEC, Big Ten, and a few other usual suspects that survive the carnage. If you see some programs that have put players in the NFL, may not have won, but they've developed and put great talent in the league, and they're suddenly gone. They just start playing soccer and get their marbles and go home. It seems to me the NFL is going to find itself in a major shortage of incoming draft talent, say, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Where is it going to get developed if there are not as many college? There's 130 or so D1 programs right now. If that number gets cut by 40 or 50. I don't know if it will, but if it did, I think the NFL is going to have a problem on its hands with just supply.
Yes. I mean, look at the United Football League. That's why those things cannot get off the ground. There's not enough good football. I don't care what anybody tells you, there's not. People don't want to watch a bunch of guys that are okay. They want to watch elite players play. And that's
let me piggyback on that. You know, this spring football that's happening now, and the Birmingham Stallions are as good a spring football team as there is out there. People aren't going to watch that in large numbers.
No.
They're not watching it in large numbers on television. It's a made-for-television product, but they're not going to the stadium. They're not going to Protective Stadium to watch a very, very good football team in its realm because something's missing. What's missing? It's not the University of Alabama. It's not Auburn University. It's not an organization with 100+ years of tradition. It is not tied to an educational institution where I went to school, where my sons go to school, where my grandparents met and fell in love and got married. There's an emotional tie that people have to college athletics.
Yep.
That really fuels this money machine.
Right.
All the eyeballs on these football games and television revenue. That's the largest impetus into this revenue stream that's become an avalanche and has been mismanaged terribly for a long time. So if you lose that, and that's another question, guys, how long will they be able to tether, however loosely, major college athletics, major college football and basketball in particular, to education?
Yeah.
How long before we're going to not require these guys to meet certain academic standards to remain eligible? Because they're going to generate revenue for my university. So I'm not going to call them an employee. That's another issue we can't even get into. We're not going to call them employees, but they're going to represent our universities. And we're not going to bother them with things like going to class, trying to earn a degree, things that will matter to them as I think it was you, David, said, when they're 35 years old.
Yeah, earlier on the show, we were talking about the balance sheet of entertainment and society. And you can argue that entertainment is kind of a quasi-liability and society is the asset. And in my opinion, the NFL does nothing for society. They do everything for entertainment. Every innovation they do is to improve their entertainment product and to make their entertainment product more of a dopamine hit. So, when players were kneeling, the national anthem, and we're gonna boycott. We're gonna show them, we're Americans and we hate that, and we're not going to watch the game, and the ratings are going to go down. That never happened. I mean, there's so many people. They're just going to watch. I'm going to watch, the Falcons play on Sunday because that's my entertainment. College athletics still has, as evidence of the Hoover Met last night, college athletics still has a chance to be good for society. But it, the NCAA dithering for as long as they dithered, that we just took steps backward, and we could have taken control of the entertainment product and still made it good for society. And we still have that chance, but we lose it, last night or yesterday with the House. I believe we took a step backwards. And so, I think it's incumbent upon us citizens that really care about society to speak up and vote with our feet and our wallet and, go to Hoover Met. And, we're still going to watch the Tide on TV. But anyway, I'm as worked up about this as I've been about anything in a long time.
Hey, Rob, is it allowed to talk actual college football on here, not just financing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure.
I'm playing with you. I just thought Kevin Scarbinsky, we've got the rare and wonderful opportunity to get Kevin's opinions. Over the years, Scarbo has had a pretty good crystal ball. So you get to put that pressure test that today, Kevin. We're just weeks, really months away from college football. And that what every fan has on their mind, because Nick Saban is the undisputed GOAT in college football, with all due respect to Coach Bryant and a couple others. But How do you think Kalen DeBoer will fare? His degree of difficulty arguably is pretty high only because of who he's immediately succeeding, but he's got players and he's not going to have an easy schedule. None of us will. But how do you see it playing out this first season for Coach DeBoer, Kevin?
I'm gonna give you a 3-word answer. I'm gonna get profound on you, Doug. I don't know. And that excites me. I think every college football fan, whether your favorite colors are crimson and white or orange and blue or whatever they might be, should be really, really excited, because something that's been as inevitable as humanly possible when it comes to athletics, and that's been Alabama football, is no longer a sure thing. We don't know. We don't know about Auburn. There's as much uncertainty to me in this state about what the Alabama and Auburn football teams are going to be this upcoming season, as we've seen for the two programs. We've seen it more at Auburn over the last 18 years, but as we've maybe ever seen. Certainly since before Nick Saban arrived the first week of January 2007. And that's exciting. That's why we watch sports, right? Because as much as as we think we see a sure thing, sometimes we're not so sure. Sometimes the kick six happens. And sometimes Bo Nix as a freshman leads Auburn past Alabama, and Gus Malzahn outsmarts Nick Saban at the end of the game to put a bow on it. So it's like, who is it? I think it was in The Old Odd Couple, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, which is great because Oscar Madison was a sports writer and Felix Unger was a photographer. I was a sports writer. My brother, who I roomed with before I got married years and years ago, was a photographer. So someone on there said, nobody lives happily ever after in Hamlet. Nobody lives. And we know that going in, and it's still entertaining to us, but we know the outcome, right? I don't know what's going to happen when I go to the Hoover Met today. When I go out there at 1:30 or 2 o'clock for the 3 o'clock first pitch, and there are two games scheduled, one to start at 3, one to start at 6, I could be there till 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. The second game might go 23 innings. I saw one of those games a few years ago between LSU and Mississippi State. What I do know is that there's going to be passion, that the fans are going to show up. The crowds the last few nights have been unbelievable. I mean, for that Ole Miss Mississippi State game the other night, the Mississippi State walk-off in the bottom of the ninth, a 2-run homer in a 1-0 game. The LSU South Carolina game yesterday, 11-10, with so many twists and turns. I mean, it was a Shakespearean comedy and tragedy within 9 innings. That's why we watch. Yeah. And if we lose that, what's left?
And Kevin, speaking of surprises, if I can, which isn't easy for me, if I can set my partisan bias aside, it was going to have to be Coach Saban's final season. It's pretty poetic that he found a way in Jordan-Hare to pull off a very improbable 4th and 31.
Yeah, I don't know the Gravedigger made up for the kick. I don't think you can ever Alabama will ever make up for the kick six in their own hearts and minds, let alone, and we won't even mention the comeback. I will mention the comeback because that is a day that I have as close to what happened centuries ago in the Roman Coliseum took place in a college football stadium. I have never seen so many people so bloodthirsty to not only defeat one team, but to see one particular player have his comeuppance and then to have that player shut them up, literally and figuratively. I mean, that's, again, we all have memories like this, right?
Yeah.
It being Savant Friday.
And I don't know, maybe NFL fans have those memories. I'm not a big NFL guy. I never have been. More so when I was a kid, actually, growing up near Philadelphia. But I don't know that you have that same emotional connection to your team. Maybe they do, but it just doesn't seem like it to me. And I just hope that college athletics in some way, shape, and form, I hope they can get their act together and we can continue to have these kind of moments that move us that stay with us, that we tell our children. They say, Dad, you told me that story. My sons deserve a medal. Daddy, you've told us that story 100 times already. Yeah, but I still tell it with the same passion. It still means something to me like it happened yesterday, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have a dog in the hunt. I'm a neutral observer, despite what some of Doug's brethren.
It being Savant Friday, I have to do my one obscure movie reference. Kevin did the Odd Couple, the great TV show and play, Neil Simon play. Kevin said, "I don't know." 3 words, very profound. Well, that takes us to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Mr. Hand and Mr. Spicoli. I don't know. I like that, Mr. Spicoli. Yes. He writes on the chalkboard. Will you pass this class? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is really wild. Chris Davis III was offered a scholarship this past week by Auburn. How fast, how time just flies by. Chris Davis III, class of 28, plays at Hewitt-Trussville, football player, 9th grader, has already been offered by Auburn, along with, I think, Missouri and Florida State and a number of other schools. But I can remember a Sunday night before signing day, talking to a friend of mine involved with Auburn recruiting. He said, man, there is this kid at Woodlawn, Chris Davis Jr., that everybody keeps saying, we got to sign. And they said he's like a playground legend. I got all this stuff. I said, well, man, hopefully we'll sign him. And look, I mean, this is the thing about it. I think what we've all talked about today, this is a cool discussion, is that the NFL, there's no attachment like it is in college. In college, again, that's where your grandparents met. I mean, I've been going down to Auburn since I was so young. I don't remember it. It's part of my life. I mean, driving back from Destin, my mother, let's just go through Auburn for a day or two, just to go in August, before school started. You don't do that in the NFL. In college, we brag about how old our stadium is. That thing's 107 years old. Those bricks were, built here and all this stuff. We don't do that. In the NFL, it's tear it down every 20, 25 years, build a new one, have a tax increase for a new stadium. Well, the one we got's fine. Oh, we got to have a new one. The NFL will never be what college sports are. And I'm with you. We've got to fight for this, and we've got to grab hold of it. And you're right about the Hoover Met. Birmingham is the city. They ought to have SEC media days there. I mean, I know it's going to be fun in Austin, in Dallas this year, but Birmingham per capita is the most collegial city in America. There's really nothing close. What the quarterback club does there in terms of fundraising and all, it's the standard for the rest of the country. Last year, over $1.6 million raised by a bunch of people going to hear people talk about college football. Does the NFL do anything like that? I don't think so. And this is why, I'm going to be heading out after the show today later to go up to the Spring River in Hardy, Arkansas. I'll be with Alabama fans, Auburn, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia, Mississippi State, Memphis, Arkansas. And man, we're going to be, you don't have that as much in the NFL, but in college, you've got blood ties to it. Like you said, Dave grew up in Mountain Brook, lifelong Bama fan, went to West Point, went to Stanford, 17 years in the Silicon Valley, got an MBA at Stanford. But on Saturdays, if it's not against Army, Dave is pulling for the Black Knights of the Hudson. I know that. But it's that Alabama. And we remember the commercials on the network. It's brought to you by Bromberg's Jewelers, Mountain Brook, and throughout the great state of Alabama, John Forney, there goes Stedman Shealy. We remember those great voices, the play-by-play guys. And I know for some of the people in New York and Philadelphia and Boston, I know it's a big deal, but there's nothing like the college thing. And Kevin's the greatest example, and Doug had to get out and go to a meeting. We lost him. But, Kevin, you came down here when you were a senior in high school.
I just graduated from high school. And
I'll defend you. I've gotten to know you these last few years. I've followed your career since the day you started writing. I was in college. I saw you at press conferences all the time. I know what people think about you. You're highly thought of. You're one of us, man. You're a lot more Southern than you are from Pennsylvania. We'll take you. I mean, and you're part of the family. I mean, but this is what I love about college sports is, and I think this, like you say, it's not been settled yet. So we're going to see what happens with it. But when it comes to borrowing money, Dave, I got to say, is this the Mrs. Potter from the Franklin National Bank of Chicago? Fred Garvin, male prostitute? Yes, it is. Well, no worry. This has all been taken care of by the Great Lake Feed and Seed Company. The money's going to come from somewhere. We just don't know where. But I do think the message here is the NCAA, somebody step up and be a leader. Because if you wait for things to happen, they're usually not good, and you damn sure don't have control over the outcome like you would have had you been proactive. Throw that out there.
I completely agree. I've got a call later today with Anderson Horowitz, the big venture capital firm. It's kind of a big call for me, so I'm excited about it. And their motto is "Software is eating the world." Well, if the NCAA is not careful, the Big Ten and the SEC is going to eat college sports. I mean, those markets are where college sports matter more than the NFL and the NBA. You know, out in the Bay Area, I mean, no one went to Stanford games or Cal games, but everyone went to Niner games and, you know, now Warriors games. So there are, you know, plenty of markets where pro sports matters, including Philadelphia, you know, near where Kevin grew up. I mean, people are big on the Eagles. You know, just watch Silver Linings Playbook, great movie. But college sports matters, you know, definitely in the SEC. And I would also say in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, and then basketball. Just as, you know, college basketball matters, you know, Carolina and Duke. But those, if the NCAA is not careful, particularly the SEC and then the Big Ten, they will consume. They will become the governing body, and they will be what matters, and we'll benefit from that as SEC fans. You know, particularly as SEC fans that care about entertainment. But the NCAA's ability to govern, for there to be, you know, fair competition in other markets and stuff, that'll all go away, and we will essentially go from semi-pro where we are now to pro, and you know, that to me is trading off short-term dopamine hits for, you know, long-term. The next generation won't have it like we had it when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Great point. Great series of points.
Yeah, Dave, you're spot on. And I think of it this way: the more major college football, and let's be honest, it's becoming the SEC and the Big Ten. And maybe it becomes that. Maybe they become the NFC and the AFC at some point. The more it becomes like the NFL, the less it becomes tethered to a college education and these institutions of higher learning. The more people are going to say, well, why should I watch that? Because we already have the NFL.
Right.
Because as good as college football is, the highest level of performance is the NFL.
Right.
So be careful what you wish for or what you're headed towards, boys, because there's already an NFL.
Right.
Yeah. They own the world.
Yep.
You will not compete with them. They will, if you're not careful, they will squash you. If you become all about the dollar and not at all about the books and the education, you become a competitor to the NFL, and you will be squashed like a bug.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that, and that's what I'm saying. College we got to have leadership. We got to have a commissioner, a strong alpha male commissioner that's going to stand up in the room and say what he thinks and mean what he says, and not be afraid to have an opinion. We have got too many people have been conditioned to just sit there and take it. Thank you, sir. May I have another? You got to stop that. You've got to fight for what we love. And that is college sports, college athletics. And Kevin's right. You take away that tethering, the connection to academics, athletics. You think of student athletes. Oh, that guy, that quarterback, he's in my chemistry class, or he's in my, structures class in engineering, or he's in my calculus class. I know him. I used to study with football players. I used to go over to the Sewell Hall when I was at Auburn, study with Scott Bolton, you know. By the way, Kevin, Scott from Theodore, Alabama, had Coach Dye call a timeout in the reverse game against Alabama in 1986. Scott was number 24, supposed to be running that play, which they'd run earlier in the season in Nashville when Auburn beat Vanderbilt 31-6. He ran a reverse in that game. And Lawyer Tillman from LaFleur High School in Mobile State out
Lawyer
there.
Tillman, yeah.
You know, Auburn's lawyer does it in reverse. But I was at that game. I can still remember exactly where I was sitting at Legion Field. God, I mean, it will work out. I'm telling you, going into Y2K in the financial services industry, I remember for 5 years, people telling me, going, Rob, what are we going to do? And I go, what are you really worried about? They go, well, the Y2K, I said, I mean, we for 5 years, when I worked at A.G. Edwards, we were preparing for it, and it came and went like the last ice age. It's just, so what? I mean, it ain't the doing in life that's so bad, it's the dreading. But uncertainty drives markets, and it drives them crazy sometimes. But we need to get an idea. We need leadership. And if people are not held accountable, nothing gets done. Free markets work things out. And I say that because, yeah, the NFL right now, they do nothing for the college game. I say as much money as they make, have them fund NIL or whatever. Like if they want this stuff from the colleges, they've got to do their part. They're just takers. There are two kinds of people in the world. There's investors and there's takers. You got to be an investor, and you got to invest in your people. If they would have paid a dividend to the student athletes years ago, like Jan Cowart and all these other smart people said, we wouldn't be where we are now. That's why we buy insurance ahead of time. Okay? That's why we do that. Use your brains.
This has been a great show.
Yeah.
I think we need to send this the YouTube to Indianapolis and to where's Roger Goodell's on New York to Manhattan.
New York. Yes. We'll send it to New York. But Kevin, we're going to wrap it up. But I really think more people need to be writing about what is happening. There's a lot of great stories in college. I mean, here it is. The football magazines are hitting the newsstands this weekend. People have an insatiable appetite to read about this stuff. So your parting comments, Kevin, on what people, there are going to be people that say, oh, it's over, it's ruined, whatever. We've heard this before.
Well, and my answer has always been, and we've talked about it here with you guys, is, the players ultimately between the lines, the players save the game. They save the day by what they do, by the unbelievable feats that they pull off, the memories they create. Those folks, they're our hope. Young people, we always say the young people are our future, and they are. I don't know how they can impact us except by continuing to do what they do, giving us a reason to watch. And let's hope that the people who are supposedly in charge don't take away those reasons to watch. Yeah.
And it's people. You got to remember, we're dealing with people, and we will make the difference. So it's going to be fun. We'll be looking forward to having Jackie Sherrill on next Friday talking about this, because he saw this 32 years ago. He's been saying it, the super conferences. Dave, private equity, anything, nobody gets involved unless they want something in return.
And to Kevin's point, let the players continue to be the players. They're not at fault in any of this, and they're the reason why we watch, and they deserve to be compensated for that, even if they are amateurs. Just think back, and at one point, we were always complaining that the Soviets were professionals and our Olympic athletes weren't. Well, that changed real fast. Yeah. The dream team took the platform that is the Olympics to a completely new level. If Caitlin Clark plays for the women's team in Paris this summer, that's going to take it to it just so yes, the players keep on playing. It's us, people that are, playing days are 40 years in arrears, get our arses off the couch, get to the keyboard, get to your platform, whatever your platform is, and weigh in, talk about it, and get things going. If you're alumnus of Alabama, talk to them. Just do what you can, and let your voice be heard. I mean, we're all good storytellers, and then tell stories and weigh in, and we can turn society in the right direction, but we have to get off our arses to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, hey, support all of our great sponsors like ECS House Industries. They are the ones out there making the great farming and agricultural equipment, the Catfish aerators. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, 25% off boot sale till June 16th. Tom Martin's Body Shop, Matei's Garage. All these great people out there. Rumble Boxing, how you live is how you fight. Don't forget the Vitamin Shop. Olive Branch in Oxford, Mississippi, open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Gateway Tire and Service. We go the distance for our communities. Gateway Tire and Service all over the South. Check them out. Hey, everybody have a great weekend. We are the most blessed country in the history of the world. We can voice free opinions. Free speech is alive and well. We're taking off Monday in observance of Memorial Day. We'll be back on Tuesday morning. Tell your friends and family about this show. God bless America. Have a great one. Thanks for watching.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.